Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tell Me About It with Jakeel. Today, I will be discussing and reading some poems revolving around some of my experiences being from the hood and being in higher education, also known as like people testing my patience or my ability to be human in the workplace. So, a lot of this came about with these ideas I think people have of like professionals of color or staff members or people who just work on a college campus that they somehow lose their humanity once they become employees. Now, while institutions are inherently kind of like corrupt or inherently like racist or inherently oppressive, right? The people who embody the institution or those people who are sometimes hired by the institution don't necessarily always perpetuate those things. And for example, myself, right, I try not to perpetuate a lot of these standards of oppression with the privileges that I hold. And I try to always check myself when it comes to those privileges. But at the same time, I think that students and community members, and even your coworkers, as a faculty member or a staff member, they forget that you're human as well and that you had experiences leading up to getting employed there. So, particularly in my experience, I grew up low income. I grew up in the hood, which means, I have a lot of different experiences like eating bologna sandwiches and, getting into fights with my siblings, getting into fights at school, things like that, like that, that I was raised on, that I was raised on a lot of hood mentality and hood tendencies and hood politics and things like that. And so just because I got a couple of degrees and a title doesn't mean that all goes out the window. So I think oftentimes I've experienced students forgetting that I am capable of feeling anger or frustration or confusion or all these different things that's not tied to my position in higher education. And so I think that's where my writing, I started to write about those experiences because I've had a lot of people like try me, like, or like, think that they're like exempt from getting like, approached by me in a non violent way or a violent way, aggressively or non-aggressively because of the things that they said or did. For example, I've had faculty members say things to me like, oh, I shouldn't be upset about what's going on in the nation, and that they undermine Black students or they undermine the students that I serve and stuff like that, and they don't expect me to feel anger. And so a lot of the things that I want people to understand when it comes to this is like, just because I'm wearing this name badge doesn't mean that I won't throw these hands. Like I am 100% okay with throwing these hands, and I have a very great sense of when to throw these hands and when not to throw these hands, because I do still want to keep my job, but at the same time, I'm not going to just let people disrespect me. I haven't forgot where I came from, and like, and so this is very much in my nature. And so I think people get shocked when I respond to them in ways that isn't typical faculty or typical staff. And so I wrote these poems as like reminders as well as experiences to that. And so the first poem that I'm going to read is called Medium Hood. I was raised by a low income family in areas where poverty robbed us of basic necessities so naturally. I've got some hood tendencies. I learned how to create meals out of snacks that gourmet kitchens could never match, turned hand-me-downs into fresh fits to pick up women even with my high waters. I never had a leg up. I discovered how to mask struggle by finessing on the regular. I've adapted this hood mentality to code switching, which has benefited me professionally and educationally, but honestly was often asked to forget my voice in those spaces. I don't recommend it. Unfortunately, I normally complied, until one too many meetings where Blackness was being condemned caused me to unleash this explosive attitude that brought back recollections of playground fisticuffs, ghetto hallucinations of a yo mama joke that went too far, that to say I no longer contain these opinions like mysterious secrets. I vocalize my gift like heavenly blessings. As a result, I have secured 6 degrees, a higher education job where I get to teach the value of self-awareness to the next generation without sacrifice to my being. I guess I've grown up to be medium hood. Meaning, from 9 to 5, I am thriving and striving to make a positive impact on my students, co-workers, and institution, so long as my identities and purpose remain unattacked. I'm patient with their ignorance and use it as teachable moments. But the instant 501 hits, tolerance goes out the window. Any voice that sounds like conflict pointed in my direction will see a shift in my demeanor. Best believe if you press me, you will get these hands. Because I did not forget the survival lessons taught on hood pavements. I did not forget where I came from, and I never will. When I wrote that poem, I wrote it from a place of anger. I'm not gonna lie, I wrote it from a place of anger, and from a place of just like providing clarity. I had a coworker who would constantly push my buttons, and constantly like ask me these different questions about what's going on in society, about how I'm experiencing things, and about how I was raised, and how I should be so glad that I made it out. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, like all of these questions doesn't do anything for me, right? And I want to be very clear when I say like I am still hood, right? I'm still like the same person who grew up in that low income housing. I'm still that same person who had those fights in elementary school, middle school, high school, who had those arguments, who had their run-ins and made bad decisions because of hood tendencies and politics and experiences. And I'm tired of people like pressing me, right? I'm tired of people like really trying to continuously test my anger or test my hood, right? And I want to be very clear when I tell them like, oh, I can do my job from 9 to 5. I could put use to these degrees that I've secured. I could impact my students, impact the institution. I can do it all with a smile and do it all with with the experiences that I have. But I also want to be clear that when I'm off of work, right, I'm not I'm not the same person, right? My personality doesn't shift, but what I'm willing to tolerate and my patience levels drastically changes. It's like when you go grocery shopping versus eating in your kitchen, right? And so it's a different aspect, and people have to understand that with professionals, especially professionals from the hood, because we are in higher ed, we are working in these spaces, right? Don't test us. Like, don't act like we are still not our culture, that we are still not our hood, that we're still not our upbringing, because we are. And just because some of us don't wear that in our workplace doesn't mean you get to test us and try us. And that goes for students, coworkers, institutions, everybody, right? And another aspect I think is really important to bring up is like a lot of people are bold with it, right? They're like, I can get away with this because you are a teacher or because you are a staff member, that you can't do anything about it. And I think I want people to understand we could definitely react and respond in a way that makes sense to us if we can justify why we're making those decisions. And sometimes like students, especially students who come from more privileged backgrounds, they think they can talk to you any type of way. They think that they have more power than you. They think that their privilege allows them to kind of degrade your existence in the classroom. And a lot of them, I have to like be very clear with them and very sometimes aggressive in the sense of saying like, yo, like just because you're in my class and you pay for this class doesn't mean you get to talk to me any type of way. Now you are free to express your opinions any way that you want to, but understand that I will be expressing mine directly right back to you. And it will probably sound just as harsh, if not as petty as what you're saying. I am a faculty member, I am a staff member with the level of education that goes beyond what yours is because of where you're at in your life. And that's not to say I'm any better or any worse. It's to say that I'm in front of this classroom and you're not, which means that while I ask for a level of respect, right, I'm not going to allow you to like behave in ways in which I feel that you are disrespecting me. So if that calls for me to call you out aggressively or non-aggressively, confrontationally or non-confrontationally, I'll do so. And because of my experiences, because of my education, because of what I was trained in my jobs, right, I've learned how to gauge it, right? Some situations call for a one-on-one conversation. Some situations call for a direct call out in the middle of class. Some situations call for an email. Some situations calls for a parking lot scuffle. I don't know. Like, I don't know what that looks like until I'm approached with it. And so people need to understand, like, I'm not the one. Like, if you think that I'm not about that life because I have a name badge on or because I got like a master's degree, I want you to rethink that. I want you to really reevaluate that because, and I'll put it bluntly, like, I don't want your disrespect to cause you to get an ass whooping, or at least to cause you to get in a scuffle or whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't want you to feel like you're not you're not capable of getting confronted in that way for your actions. And some people react in different ways. The way that I was raised and the ways that I have experienced things, one of those ways is physical confrontation. Now, while I don't promote physical violence, while I don't, condone it, and I don't like wish that on people, sometimes that has to be the option for some people because the disrespect has gone that far. Not to say that that's acceptable or not acceptable. That's just to say that's the reality. And in my reality, throwing hands is definitely one of them. So you could try me if you want to, but I can't guarantee you that it's going to be fisticuffs or not. And so I wrote this next poem for those people who think that trying me is something that they want to do, whether that's in my position in higher ed or outside of that. I just want to send them this reminder. And it's called Don't Try Me. Before approaching me with an audacious attitude, consult with whomever you whisper your prayers to. Please rely on the teachings of whoever you believe is listening to the way your faith communicates. Contact them in any way that you need to, because I will not respond to your boldness or disrespect with questions. I have accepted physical force as a tool for these occasions. To be straightforward, I will throw hands, box, catch fades, engage in quarrels, exchange right hooks for uppercuts, scrap till the break of dawn, and brawl until my point is made. I will resort to violence to defend my people and heritage. I have no problem fighting for a purpose. So please, try your holy provider before you attempt to try me. And so those two things, those two poems that I wrote them from both of those perspectives of my experiences in higher ed, but also just my experiences just navigating the world. Is that people sometimes will try you because they think that, that we've become progressive enough where physical violence isn't like people's number one resort. And it's not my number one resort. But like, you have to understand that people were raised in a certain way that certain things are going to be taken as disrespect and certain things are going to be taken as like, oh, you must want to fight me. And I don't ever want to fight people, but I want people to understand that I'm always ready for a fight. And because I'm always ready for a fight, I think that sometimes it comes out in spaces where I don't want it to come out. And it's because people's entitlement, people's privilege starts to like spew all over the place and they don't realize what they're doing. And so hopefully this is a lesson to them, like, don't push people. Don't push educators, especially educators who had to navigate so much to get to where they're at. Like, for us as like low income, as those who consider themselves to be from the hood and things like that, we had to jump through so many hurdles and barriers to get to where we are as educators. And it's not fair that the moment we get there, we get tested by these entitled, privileged coworkers, students, or institutional employees, where we're constantly questioned to the point where we may be like our jobs are in jeopardy because of how we were raised and stuff like that, or how we what our upbringing was like. And it's just like, if people understood that we can be human, we are human, we get angry, we get frustrated, we sometimes lose patience, we sometimes like are confused about things. Like these are normal things that people experience in their positions, and we're not exempt from it, you know. But we're also expected to like have a better grasp of it because we are raised the way we were raised. And that's just, I think, something that I've had to navigate. I think a lot of other people in similar backgrounds to me have had to navigate. And I don't think it's necessarily fair. It's the reality, but I don't think it's fair. And so when people try us, and when people think that they can just like push us and push us and push us, like you will get a reaction, you will get backlash, you will get a response. And sometimes that response isn't the response you expected. And you can be shocked all you want to. You could, you know, you can threaten to sue, all these different things, but your actions have provoked our responses. And so I leave you all with that message is like, don't try us. Like, don't push us. Don't, you know, don't think that we aren't capable of these things, because we are. And if I'm going to talk candidly about myself, for everybody out there who I interact with in the workplace and the things like that, if you think that I'm not about that life, then I think you're wrong. And if you think that I won't throw hands, I mean, try me and see, but I really don't recommend it. And I don't recommend it for anyone who is trying to approach educators in that way. We are human beings capable of feeling anger and throwing hands. We're not a monolith. Don't try us. Thank you. Um, and so that's been another episode of Tell Me About It with Jakeel. Stay tuned for what we have in the future. Enjoy.